This technology has been seen throughout human history, on every continent, in every culture, for as far back as humans have been around. That is not our technology that was flying around pre-1947. Look, Dave Fravor was here in this chair, Joe, talking to you, and he talked about the Tic Tac incident from 2004 as he testified before Congress in late July. We didn't have that technology then to do what the Tic Tac did. We don't have it now. We don't have it. If you look back at the paper trail, this is what got me hooked on this topic in the begin with. I can't go out and find UFOs. I don't know the cosmic meaning of all this stuff, but there is a paper trail within our government, documents, memos, reports that were generated by the Department of Defense before the Freedom of Information Act existed, before they had to worry about the public ever seeing these reports. Those documents paint a pretty clear picture. General Nathan Twining, who became Chief of the Air Force, he was also the first Air Force guy to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He wrote this document in 1947, the Twining Memo, where he talks about these things are not fictitious or imaginary. They're real, and they're not ours. And we don't think they're the Russians either. It's not our technology. We wish we had it.
I'm sorry. How did he describe it?
It's not fictitious or imaginary. It's real.
But how did he describe the crafts or how they behave?
Metallic. They can appear and disappear. We can't detect them on our sensors, whatever, I think it was radar back then, that they can outfly our best planes, fly circles around us. There's nothing we can do about them. We have no defense mechanism against them. And then there's the paper trail starts there. There was a study by the FBI and the U.S. Army in 1948. Then the CIA, after it was created, got involved. They've been studying this stuff for a long time, and the documents where they speak to each other, very frankly, this is real. It's not us. As the 1960, they put out a memo saying this is serious business. We need to figure this out. I think there are inescapable national security implications for this technology. There is a race for it. We're trying to get it. The Russians are trying to get it. The Chinese are trying to get it. Whoever gets it, they win.
Are there some sort of reports about the Russians and the Chinese also having recovered crafts?
It had a lot to do with Harry Reid's decision to go ahead and support funding because those documents show that the Russians are trying to do what we're trying to do, which is to take this stuff apart and figure out how it works.
And what year was this?
This is 1993, the first time I went. But their study lasted, they had the biggest study in the history of the world. From 78 to 88, the USSR sent out an order to every military unit in the vast Soviet Empire that any UFO, any orb, any ball of light, anything weird in the sky, all has to be investigated. And that information had to be funneled to the Ministry of Defense, to the desk of a guy named Colonel Boris Sokolov, who was in charge of this program. And I met him, and he shared a lot of that information with me. And he admitted, we're trying to figure this stuff out because if we could duplicate that technology, we could kick your ass in terms of stealth. We could beat you at your own game on stealth technology. So they were trying to do it. They're trying to figure it out. We hear bits and pieces that they have recovered crashes as well. So do the Chinese, maybe the Israelis.
Also in these documents. And can you tell them who you gave them to, that whole stuff? Can you tell them
that? They got into the hands of the U.S. government. And then that was after I came back from Russia the first time. I went back again in 96. A lot of the people who had been willing to talk to me during Glasnost were now afraid. They would not meet with me. The people who had gone on camera changed their tunes because the whole country had changed in that time period. But the documents also went to OSAP. That's the program that the DIA ran. Bigelow was the contractor for it. And they hired a bunch of Russians to go through those documents, figure out the structure of the Russian UFO program, and did a lot more analysis than I could do just by myself.
And in these documents, they talked about shoot-down attempts, which is something that we'll be hearing more about over the next 15 weeks, I hope. So in Russia, they had this policy at first to engage these things, and they lost pilots.
Yeah, they had 40 different incidents during that study where Russian warplanes chased UFOs. 3 of those cases, the UFOs turned around and shot them down. They disabled the planes and the planes crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after the 3rd crash, the Russian Ministry of Defense put out the order, leave them alone. Yeah. They may have, quote, incredible capacities for retaliation. Just leave them alone.
And one last thing about that blew my mind. We did an episode about this, like him going to Russia, the whole thing. They talked about in those documents that they knew how many satellites that we had dedicated to looking for UFOs. Is that correct?
Yeah. I met this Russian scientist who had worked on their version of Star Wars. He lived in one of these secret cities. He'd never spoken to any journalist, let alone a Western journalist. And he started telling us about the work that they were doing. He showed me this tabletop model of a laser weapon that he called the weapon of the aliens. But he said he'd been involved in the Russian space program in the earliest days. They had satellites up there that were seeing these things coming in and out of space into Earth's atmosphere and going out. He said the Americans, I know that you guys had those satellites. You were seeing the same stuff we were. Their intelligence agents got information from the U.S. They knew we were collecting information back then. They know we're collecting it now.
And when they said that they had jets shot down, do we have instances of jets getting shot down in America?
We do. It's kind of sketchy because a lot of those records, we have records of the planes going down, but there's no indication that the UFOs were responsible other than the Captain Mantell incident. It's a pretty famous UFO case where he chased a UFO and then crashed. They think he might have run out of gas. And I think the Air Force tried to explain he was chasing the planet Venus, which is preposterous, Yeah, we have some. Yeah.
So the Russians, how many crafts we supposedly Grush said that the United States is in possession of 12?
We should back up on Grush, right? Like,
okay.
What I'm thinking is something big happened. We had these hearings, right? And everybody knows Grush because they saw him for the first time during that. In those hearings, he did not say that. And so there's an important thing there of what he said and what he couldn't say during those hearings. So I'm not going to say that Grush has ever said that. That's not in his Dopser. Like, that's not authorized shit. If somebody said that, I don't know who said it. All we know he said was right there in that hearing.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? It's like there's a lot of rumors out there, and I don't know.
So this 12
You've heard it from
vehicles,
people, and
yes.
I've heard it from people,
Yeah.
not from Grush, though.
Okay. Okay. So